Living my bucolic life, free of the city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Everybody, welcome to a new project, and this is going to be one just for fun, just because I can. It's going to be this cute little flowered jumpsuit, and I purposely have been avoiding jumpsuits for years just because I hate that whole process when you have to use the restroom, the whole strip down for the world. But this is... It seems like it's a simpler jumpsuit to get out of. It seems like you just pull your straps and that's it. And it looks like it's flared enough at the bottom that it can accommodate my, voluptuousness in my hip area. So I have some, this was in a floral print, which I thought was really cute. And so I have a bunch of floral print. It is a cotton, 100% cotton. It's slightly heavier than just a regular calico, but not too much. I have pre-washed it on hot, pre-dried it in hot, so hopefully all of the shrinkage, or the majority of it, is done. And the pattern itself calls for a lot of fabric. It calls for, let's see, this is jumpsuit B. For my size, it calls for 4 7/8 yards. I have 4, but I was looking at the layout and it seems to me like there's a lot of wasted space that I can condense some. Plus, I usually have to shorten the length on these, so I think I'm going to be okay. So it looks like there's a couple different differences between the two different jumpsuits. We have this one comes more like a little slight V-neck. This one is straight across, and this one has little ties at the shoulders. This one does not, but in general they look very similar. So anyhow, I'm doing the slight V-neck and the little bows because I can. So let me tip the camera down, open up the pattern, and get started. Okay, so before I even cut out my patterns here, I looked, and down here at the bottom, it has the finished garment measurements. So for my size 16, the finished garment bust is 47 inches. That's fine. It just says A and B width. I'm not too sure what width they're talking about here, but it says whatever it is, that width is 49.5. Maybe hips? I don't know, but that should be fine. And then down here at the bottom, it says finished length from the base of the neck. And for my size, once again, it's 47 1/4. So what I did is put my little clip at 47 1/4, held this tape up at the back of my neck and looked in the mirror, and it is long. It's somewhere between lower calf and ankle. And for something this fun, I want mine to be a little bit shorter. Like on her, it's up here. For me, it was like closer to down there. So I'm actually going to shorten my pattern pieces by 3 inches. I think it will still be in the right range, but be a little bit better for me. And hey, I should be able to cut them out of my a little bit less of fabric too. Okay, so this is my front piece. The back piece looks very similar. What I want to show you is up here, of course, is the top, and there is a double line here. That is the lengthen and shorten hairline. So if you typically have a crotch that is way too low, this is the fold line where you would take some of that up. I, however, never have that problem. My crotch line is always a little bit too high, if anything. So I'm going to leave it actually just the place it is, because since I'm going to have some ties up here, first of all, usually in a jumpsuit, the crotch is lower than in pants because you have to have that extra ease to be able to function. But also, I'm going to have little ribbon tie straps up here. So at the worst, if I need to adjust it, I'll just adjust where my little straps are tied. So if you look down here, it's the little cheat sheet that has the size and the actual bust, and it has a little bit of detail explaining what ease is and everything like that. So that's kind of nice. But as far as shortening these, there is not a lengthen and shorten hairline down below the crotch, which is where I need to take my length off. So I am just going to measure, let's see, this top seam line, cut line is the one for my size. I'm just going to measure up from there. Find a pin here, 3 inches, and just mark that all the way across, and then trim, well, not straight, slightly curved all the way across the whole bottom. And you can see it's a very flared leg. And I'm going to do that for both this front piece and the back piece. Okay, I don't think I'm going to have any trouble getting this to fit. Let me explain what I thought was the issue. If you can see, these pieces are really wide, so what you have to do is open up your fabric flat with no fold and layer it on top of each other. So you have selvage edges matched up here, double thickness. And if you can see the way they have these placed, they are making sure that up is always up. And if you have a fabric with a nap or with a design where there's obviously an up, that's important. For this, there really isn't. I really don't see an up to all of these flowers. I see leaves going every which way. So what I'm going to do is take this piece and flip it around. And I believe I can wedge it in here like this and have plenty of room and fabric left over. I just don't see the point in wasting all of that if it's not necessary. So anyhow, let me finish cutting this out. Welcome to another day. It's actually been a few days since I worked on this. So I'm eager to jump in. This pattern has separate instructions for jumpsuit A and jumpsuit B. So I'm skipping all the way to page 3 here. And we're going to start with the front section, number 8, and it says stay stitch the neck edge. So that's fine. That piece is cut on a diagonal, and the stay stitching is going to keep it from stretching, you know, that's important. So you can see this part here that is curved is the armhole. This part here that is very straight, that's the neckline. This is the area where we're going to stay stitch. So just running a row of stitching at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, I like to do it at 1/2 inch instead of 5/8 because that way less chance of it showing up, but it still does the job. But before I take off my paper, my pattern paper, I want to go ahead and get any markings transferred. Let's see, for my notches, I'm just going to clip straight down to them, which I know gives some people a heart attack, but it works out, it's fine. Okay, now for the circles, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and mark all of them. I was thinking I wouldn't, but I am. I'm going to use my leather punch, circle punch, as I always do, a heat erasable pen. And what I do is I put my little piece of leather under the tissue paper on top of the fabric and punch out the little pattern circles for my size. Then I can just color inside those circles that I punched and my little marks transfer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and transfer the markings for these 2 little circles here. The one here, this is for strap placement, so it's an easy one. Clip any notches, and then I'm going to go to my sewing machine and make this row of stay stitching on both of the front pieces. So when I move my paper, this is a pretty busy print and it's easy for marks to get lost. So I'm just going to put a big circle around those dots I just drew. It'll make them stick out a little more, so it'll be easier for me to find. You know what? I'm going to switch to a different color. I think that will just make it even more easy for me to see. Okay, so I'm going to put the red away. We are dealing with, well, it's black ink and a blue pen, so whatever. Let me go ahead and make that stitching. I'd like to introduce you to our machine of the day. This one I named Frida. She is a make called the Free, which is an interesting name. It's named after the man who owned the company, whose last name was Free. And she is model number 5, so she is the Free number 5 from Rockford, Illinois. I think she's made in the 19-teens from what I can tell, you know, but I don't know for sure. But anyway, I just rebuilt her about a month ago. I love her to death, and I'm going to go ahead and get her started. She is for sale, though. I will let you know she is for sale if you are interested. Anyhow, she's on my treadle base, so we're going strictly non-motorized today as far as the sewing machine, but I will be using, you know, my Burnett serger to serge edges here. And just to let you know, I did go ahead and serge all the way around each one of those pieces so that it will not be in danger of fraying on me while I wash it. And I'm going to go ahead and get started on these ties. Piece number 9, there are 4 of them. And you can tell from the instructions, but also from this placement of these little circles, I'm not marking them, because it's kind of obvious it's just 5/8 of an inch in. But from this edge, you can see it's 3/8 of an inch from that edge over here. If you were to measure it like that, from the center of the circle to the cut edge. So that way we know that this seam is going to be sewed at a little 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, fold them lengthwise, right sides together, and sew along here at 3/8 of an inch the entire way. I have to do that to all 4 of these pieces. I just wanted to show you little Miss Frida in action here. She is a long shuttle machine, but you can see she goes really well. So it's got this shuttle in here instead of a round bobbin. Oh, let me move you down so you can see. That moves back and forth here and catches the thread. So, fun little machine, very fun little machine. Since I'm just doing a whole bunch of these in sequence, I'm not pulling one off and then starting the other. I can just kind of continue over and start on the next one. Now there's not a reverse on this machine, so I just do a couple stitches, lift the presser foot, move it forward again, and then she's ready to keep going. Right, so I need to flip all these right side out. I did 1, 3 more to go. So I'm just trimming some of this seam allowance, you know, at an angle up here at the very top. Just using a little wire loop turner. It has the little latch hook kind of tip there. Put it in all the way up. And I am latching it over here on the side that has the stitching on it. I just think that that might be a little bit stronger. Okay, so it latches up like that. And then I will just very carefully, oops, it let go. Don't you hate that? All right, well, I will relatch it. Once I get it relatched, then I will very carefully turn it right side out. Just pulling the fabric over the head of it. You know, it takes a while, but that's okay. The hardest part is just getting it started up here. All right, it is starting. Okay, so now that I have it started in my turn, I can just keep pulling it slowly and carefully until I have the little end poking out the bottom. Getting there, getting there. Okay, so now I have my little end poking out the bottom here. I can just pull it all right side out, and I'm going to go ahead and iron these once I have them all turned like this so that they lay nice and flat. Okay, I need to attach my straps to my front piece, but I marked it on the back side and I have to look at it on the front side to attach it, which is not that big of a deal. I just noticed something though. My ends of my straps are open, and they should, when I sewed them, I should have come straight across and down. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think that they're going to fray. I don't think it's going to bother me, and it's a flowery jumper, you know, so anyhow. Those are open, no big deal. Up here at the front top, there's it's like it would come to an angle, but it's cut off flat at the top. This strap just needs to be laid kind of at a 90-degree angle to this cutoff point, okay, and just centered in there. That's going to put it, if I had marked it on the right side, right between those two dots, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pin it to both of my fronts and stitch it straight across here at 5/8 of an inch on both of the fronts. So now I need to get my back piece, and again, I'm just going to clip my notches, serge all the way around it, and then after I get that, then I'm going to be sewing straps to my back. So they have different dots here, and yes, this is upside down so you can't really see it, but there's a set of dots for view A and a set of these are for view B, closer to the inside. View A is closer to the outside. So once I actually get everything serged all the way around, then I'm going to come back, and on the right side of my fabric, I'm going to mark where the correct dots are for my view. I have my back piece here, and you can tell I've punched out the circles for my view B and transferred those over with my heat erasable pen over here onto the right side. And I have a strap here that I am matching up the top cut edge of my strap to the cut edge of my back piece. And I'm going to sew straight across here at 5/8 of an inch. I will do the same thing for my other back piece, and I'll be right back. Okay, so before I sew my fronts to my backs, I'm putting a pocket on here. And the pocket is only for view A, but I'm doing view B, and I'm using a pocket, and they can't stop me. But I think I already put away their instructions for view A that have the pocket instructions on it. So, I mean, a pocket is a pocket, so I am going to put it together my way. And if it happens to match with what's on my other instruction sheet, great. If it doesn't, that's okay also. But what I can see is there's a big circle here and a big circle here. Now on the pattern pieces themselves, one of the circles is on the back. So these are very side placed pockets. You can kind of see here how the pocket wraps around towards the back. So they're not in the front, they're more like on the sides like that. So with all that being said, what I'm going to do first is, of course, serge all the way around both of these just to keep them from fraying when they get washed, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so the fold line, if I measure it, is 1.5 inches from the cut edge, okay? So I'm going to pick a top. These rectangles look like this, and I need to make my fold line 1.5 inches from the top. Let me move that away. Oh my gosh, lace. I almost forgot I was going to use lace in this. Maybe I'll use it in the pockets. That would be a good idea. This is some lace that I've had around for a long time. It's just that cotton lace, but I was playing with dyes once, and I think it's like a mix of an indigo dye and something else. It's just a little piece, but I think it's going to go with this. So yeah, I'm going to incorporate that lace in here somehow. But now that I have this line drawn at 1.5 inches, I'm folding it right sides together, okay? And I'm going to sew right here. You cannot see that? Okay. And I'm going to sew right here where this fold is at 5/8 of an inch on both sides. All right, so at this point, what I need to do is fold my little top edge right side out and go ahead and press the top and around the sides, you know, at 5/8 inch in on those 3 sides so that it looks like this one, which is already pressed, okay? So now this is my top. I can kind of feel where that edge is, and I'm thinking I'm going to put a row of my little lace right across here, and then when I stitch the top of this lace on, it's going to hold down the flap right here underneath it. I think that that looks fun. So that'll be at least one place to put this lace on the pockets. After I get done with that, let me see here. If that's 2 pockets worth, oh, I still have about 1.5 yards of this, so I might put it around the top edge also. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and put my lace on after I press this side down and then stitch it right across here. When I'm cutting my lace, I'm cutting it closer to the length that the original fabric is, so it's sticking out about 1/2 inch there, because I want to be able to fold it underneath like this so I can anchor it down here. Over here at the ironing board, I want to show you I am going to be using my good friend Fusible Bond Stitch Witchery. I'm just going to place a little strip of it underneath this little flap here and iron that on, and that's going to hold this flap down in place where I need it to be while I am doing all of my stuff with the lace on the front. So what I'm also going to do is cut myself a strip just a little bit wider than my pocket and place it. I can feel where that little change in texture is, where the flap ends on the other side. Okay, so then I can put my lace directly over that and know that the top of my lace will be over where that little flap is on the back, and iron it on, fusing it in place here, and then I can just turn these little sides over and press them in the back. Like so. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and just stitch along this very top little row here at the top of my lace, so that when I get it done, it'll look like this. And I have stitching going straight across the top of my pocket. I don't have to worry about this flipping up out of place. Everything's fine. So I'm going to get this one done, set my pockets aside, and keep working on my piece, because if I'm going to be putting these pockets where it's indicated on view A, which is kind of straddling that side seam, I actually have to make that side seam first. I went ahead and got out the other instruction sheet because I wanted to make sure that I was doing the seam that I have to put my pocket over first. And for view B, they have you doing the little, you know, inseam first, which is not what I want. So I was just curious if view A had a better way, because that's the one with the pocket, and they do. They are going to have you do the outside seam first. And you can kind of see here where they're placing the pocket at a jaunty angle, you know, for giggles, I suppose. So this is the method for putting the jumpsuit together that I'm going to use. So even though I'm doing jumpsuit B, I'm going to be following the instructions for jumpsuit A, because it has the pocket, and we love our pockets. So with that, what I'm going to do is put one of my back pieces face up, and I need to get the corresponding front piece. So I have a front piece that goes along with this back piece, so that these side seams are going to match up when I put them right sides together. So I'm matching up the top and bottom. I believe there is a notch in between, but honestly it's matching up so well, I'm not going to worry about that. Pin it together, stitch this at 5/8 inch, and then press the seam allowance open. I'm going to do that for both sets of front and back. Sewing that, and I ran out of bobbin. So if you've never seen one of these, this is the bobbin. Looks like a little bitty spoked spool. And the way that you wrap it is, what I do is I put a couple little wraps around the spool, just from my thread up here on top. And this little device is the bobbin winder. So once I wrapped it, I put the end of the thread over the tip of the little brass spool, and that goes in the holder here. Okay, there's a little holder that's spring-loaded. Come on, go in there. Trick is getting it in there without letting your little thread come loose from being wrapped around the side, and I can tug it and it's still attached, so we are good. So then you just rock, this rocks back and forth, and you just rock it forward until it engages. And with this model, what you do is there's a little post here, you wrap it over the little fork of there, under the little nub on the bottom, and then you hold it between your thumb and your finger out here. And just like most machines, there's a little clutch screw that you let go in the back so that when you turn the wheel, hang on a second, so that this part can spin separate from the belt, okay? So I'm just gonna get the little treadle belt started. Notice the hand wheel is not moving. Just this little part here is moving. And it's just gonna go back and forth until my little bobbin spool is full of thread. So then to put it back, this is like the bobbin case here. You can see there's a little groove right there. Put your thread in so it is wrapping around this way, okay, anti-clockwise. Slip it in, put your finger on top so it won't spin. Pull the thread down that groove, around a little pointy bit down there, and then straight up. And then when you pull on the thread, you should see the little spool head moving, which you do. And I can just pop it back in here, and we will keep going on with our sewing. Make sure this is all the way up front. And there you go. Okay, so I am down here on my table. This is my top. Okay, here's the seam I just pressed open. And I wanted to get an idea of where this pocket was supposed to go. So on my back piece, there's a little circle here that's supposed to indicate the back corner of the pocket. So I transferred that mark over, okay? And I'm doing that now because I knew I was going to be ironing all this and those marks would disappear. But there is a different piece for the front A than front B. And front B, because front B is meant for no pocket, does not have a mark over there. So you know what? I am just going to give it my best shot based on how I see them laying theirs out here. How I see them laying theirs out here. It looks like it's only about 1 inch showing on the back section on the top, and maybe 3 times that, maybe 4 inches down in the pocket. Okay, so with that, I know that this mark here is good. So I'm going to put a pin there and just rotate this part over about like that. I think that that's pretty close to matching how they want theirs. So I'm just going to pin this in place and then match the other side up to this. And get it pinned on here. When I sew my pockets, I started drawing this already. I'm going to start, you know, at an edge stitch right about here, just above my lace. Come up so that when I hit this point, I'm going to be almost 3/8 of an inch from the side, between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch. Cut over and then back down. And then I'm going to go all the way down. There we go. Then I'm going to go all the way down, over, back up this side, over till I hit about 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch here. and then come straight back down to meet my stitching just above my lace, okay? That's going to give a little extra support up here at the top of my pockets. Hey, I wanted to give you a quick little view on my dress form because once I sew this little inseam, I can't put it on her anymore. She's just not made that way. But one thing I didn't think about, someone being as ample as I am, I do need to wear a bra. And with these straps, you can see that they're placed pretty wide. I don't think I'm going to be able to wear a bra under this just like this. I'll probably be wearing it more like a jumper, a pantsuit jumper. I don't know, a jumpsuit jumper with t-shirt on underneath it or something like that. But I think that you can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. Got its big pockets right here, which are very cute. I do like those. And again, this is not a serious outfit. This is a lighthearted, hanging around kind of outfit. And I think it's cute. I think it's going to do exactly what I want it to, I'm hoping. The one thing is, I have it pinned fairly tight right here. If I pull it out to where that seam allowance is, there is going to be elastic going along the back that'll cinch that in. But this is going to be, you're going to need to make sure that this circumference up here is wide enough to pull over your hips because that's the way you're going to get the whole thing on. So anyhow, let me just go ahead, give you one more view. I think she's cute and we will move on. What I'm doing right now is I'm going to take each side and I am pinning together this inseam area here. So this is the big old long crotch here. So this is what I'm pinning together. I'm going to sew it for both sides at 5/8 of an inch and then press the seam allowance open. I've got one leg inside out. I'm going to lay it here. You can see from the pocket that this is the front over here. And I've got the other leg right side out. Right here is the same seam, and of course you can tell this is the pocket, it is the front, and I'm going to tuck the right side out one inside of the inside out one and match up this seam. So first I'm going to pin together where this intersection is, right here at the little deepest part of the crotch, okay? And then I will match it all the way up the front, all the way up the back, and sew it at 5/8 of an inch. Now, if you get this part done and you try it on, and you want your crotch to have some kind of ease in it on a jumpsuit, you know, so that when you sit down, it doesn't become uncomfortable. And if it feels like you need more room, if you can get yourself back to this position where you have one leg inside the other leg, and just come back, because at that point you'll have a row of stitching at 5/8 of an inch. You know, at the top where the curve starts, just come down maybe a 1/4 inch lower and try it on there. If you need it to be even lower, take another 1/4 inch down. So after I sewed it, I went back, opened it up, you know, in the center front and center back, and pressed that seam open up there. But now when it gets lower down here near the crotch, I think you can see here, I ran a second row of stitching fairly close to it. I didn't want to overlap it exactly, but it's fairly close to it, just in the curved part down here. And I can't tell yet if it's going to be right or not, but just so that it's going to be a little more comfortable, I am just clipping notches in here. You could pink it, you could serge it closer, you could do whatever. I'm just clipping it like that so that if this seam wants to fold open, which would be nice, those little notches that I cut are gonna give it enough room so that it can spread out, you know, because otherwise that seam allowance would be poking straight up, and you know, who needs that? So it is time to interface my little facing pieces, and of course I am using my extremely lightweight fusible interfacing because I don't want to add any bulk. But let me flip you over to my dress form because I just pinned it up there, you know, because I can't put the legs through because there are no legs. But just pinning it up there, it looks kind of cute, don't you think? At least I think so. Back down here, I'm just going to go ahead and cut these out. They're both cut, you know, a single piece on a fold, and fuse it on in the standard way. And then I will be back. So once I fused on my interfacing to the wrong side, I went ahead and serged along the bottom edge of both of these because what the pattern actually asks you to do is turn it up and stitch it, but I don't want to, so I'm not going to. So at this point, what I need to do is match up the side seams and sew these both at 5/8 inch, and then press these little seam allowances open. Alrighty, I have my facing all sewed together, pressed open at the seam allowances, and now it's time to get it matched up to the top of my jumpsuit. Jumpsuit. It's a great word, isn't it? Jumpsuit. Anyhow, I need to pull my straps down before I put my facing on because it's going to be layered on top here. So I'm going to do the same thing on the back. Pull those down. And here is my little facing. I'm going to match up this little dip in the center front first. Okay, and then just go all around, and I'm going to match up these corners and then the side seams on both sides. Okay, so I have it pinned in the front, and now for the back, it's just going to be a matter of pulling the sides out here so I can first match up my center back of my facing with the center back of my jumpsuit. And I'll put a couple pins in between. Everything matches up really well. And I'm going to sew it all the way around, you know, up, down, everywhere, all the way around at 5/8 inch. All right, so I have it sewed. I'm going to need to understitch this so that it will lay nicely. So I'm just going to make a couple clips down here. Okay, so you don't technically need it because this is flat. But up here in the front, I'm clipping up to within, you know, a fat 1/8 inch from the stitching line. Down here in the very front, I'm clipping almost up to where that little point is, where I'm pivoting. And then over on this side also, the other front side. Right, and to understitch, give a little tug for my straps to pull those out. I may have to do it in a couple different sections, you know, depending on how easy it is to get into a little bit here. Because you see how where the strap is attached, it's in this little V kind of shape. It's very hard to be inside here with your foot. But I would bring you over and show. This is the back part here. As I am understitching it, I just kind of pull the facing out and make sure that, you know, the seam allowances are in the right position underneath. Now when you're going over your straps, the straps are still down over the bodice. You know, here's the facing there. That way, you don't want to understitch them like that. Don't do that. Just leave them nice and flat. And when you get up to your side seams, make sure the seam allowances are nice and flat. My fabric is not terribly bulky. If yours was more bulky, you might want to do some trimming of these seam allowances here before you understitch it. Okay, so I am coming up to the front where this little wedge part is, and I'm going to show you how far I can get with just a regular presser foot. Hang on a second, let me scoot things over here. Again, double checking to make sure that my seam allowances are going the right direction here. Okay. And that looks about as close as I can get and be comfortable. So I'm gonna put a back stitch in it the way that I do. Lift this up and pull it out, and then I will start again on the other side. But you can see here, this is my front, and I got up to within, probably almost 2 inches of the top. Now before I actually go to the other side, I realized, oh my goodness, it's so bulky up here at the top. So I'm just going to trim out some of that extra little piece, trim out some of this fabric, and then the side that has the facing with the inner facing, I'm going to grade that so it's slightly longer than the fabric side. So that is what it looks like at the very top, you know, so that my strap is shorter, my front is here, my back is there, and that way when I go to turn it, well, you know what? I'm going to trim more. It needs these sides trimmed out here also. Okay. Should have done this at the table, but you know. So now that looks a whole lot better. So when I flip it right side out, oh, it's so much flatter there. So that's nice. So anyway, I'm going to finish with my understitching and I'll see you back at the table. Okay, over here at my ironing board, I have pressed the edges under. So it is ready to go that way. But I'm going to be doing a couple things a little bit differently from the instructions say right now. And the first thing is they don't really give you instructions for attaching the front facing. Okay, and underneath the back there's going to be elastic and stuff, but underneath the front they don't really say. But I'm going to be using my lace on the outside. So just so that all of this facing stuff is going to behave the way I want it to while I'm sewing my lace on, once again, I am just going to be temporarily fusing down with Stitch Witchery the front facing. Okay, just cutting little pieces off to put underneath the little M shape here on the front. Let me get that done and then we'll deal with the back. Okay, so I've got my front just kind of fused down. I will be stitching it, but for right now it's just kind of fused into place. Now the back is going to be where the elastic will go. And in the instructions, because this is loose up in the front, they can just have you feed things through. I am going to be closing up my whole facing all the way around before I put my elastic in. And so what that is going to mean is when I'm ready to feed my elastic through, I'm going to open up some of these stitches here on where the side back facing is sewed to the front facing. I'm just going to open up probably about an inch worth of stitches in the middle on both sides, just so I can feed my elastic through. That way it'll be easy to close back up. All right, the back facing isn't as tricky because it is just a straight line, but you know, just to keep everything together, I am just going to put a couple little dots of Stitch Witchery at the very, very bottom. I don't want it up in here because then that could interfere with my elastic that I'm going to be putting through. Just to tack it, because I am going to be putting my lace on here following a similar method to what I did when I was putting it on the pockets. I am going to be placing my lace right about here, and let me get a pen so I can draw this because it'll make a lot more sense that way. Okay, so The reason I had to have this fused down is because I'm using the facing edge as my guideline. And I know you can't see it, but when I run my hand over the edge, I can feel where the edge of that facing is, okay? So I'm just kind of drawing a little line where that is. I'm going to be putting the edge of my lace just above it, okay? Now where all of these little creases are, it's going to get a little bit tricky. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a point at the very beginning, at the very middle of my lace. I held this up to it, and I think the amount of lace I have is almost exactly what I'm going to need for this project. So if it's a little bit short, we'll just put the amount that is short on the back so no one sees it. But here, hopefully you can see I have 2 lines coming this way. And that is where I'm going to be placing my lace, well, just above there. So if I line up, let's see if I can get you closer here. Now get a pen. If I line up the top edge of my lace where I want to sew it, and this bottom edge where that center point is, right here, then this line, which is matching up with the seam line underneath it, is going to be the stitching line I need in order to get a perfect little V shape that's going to match the dress. So I'm going to go ahead to the machine and sew that stitch right there along that line. Okay, so I've got that sewn here. So if I open it up, and let's stick a pin in there so I can flatten it out a bit and press this flat. Let me do that really quick. It should match up with that center front angle. Okay, so now I have ironed it. I'm going to try to put it right back where it was, and perfect. Look, it matches up that angle perfectly. So that's good. Now the second angle I'm going to be dealing with is up here at the sleeves, and that angle is going to be going the opposite direction. Okay, so with this pinned on upside down, that's not its real place. It's just for getting these little pleats figured out. I'm lining the top of my lace all the way up to the topmost point up here. Okay, I'm just going to stick a little pin in that point right there. Okay, and then I'm going to bend the top down so I'm following down this way where I want the top of my lace to be. Just stick a little pin here just to hold it in place. Okay, so now with this holding my top point, which is where it will taper to nothing, I can make the little dart where I need this to be. And you know what, I'm just going to draw it first. A little stitching line right about here. That way if my pin moves, I still have it written down. Okay, let me pull all of this off. And I'll do the same thing for the other side, but if you can see, maybe, I have a little line drawn on my lace this way. So I'll do the same thing on this side, but I'm going to go ahead and make that seam also. And that should give me both angles that I need for my lace. Alrighty, I've sewn my little darts, and I'm ready to go ahead and position it on here. So I'm just going to kind of follow my line that I started with, and well, hopefully this will work. It'll work close enough. Yeah, that's good. All right, so I'm just going to place it so that the top edge of my lace is the same position as the edge of the facing back here, hopefully all the way around. I do believe I have enough lace to go all the way around, you know. If I don't, there might be a little section in the back without lace, but the world will not end. So let me go ahead and get this pinned on, and I'm just going to be stitching it, running a straight stitch through this top of the lace at the very top. I'm not sure if I'm going to stitch the bottom yet, but for sure we're just going to do the top first. Okay, so here is my thing. The lace was a little bit short, not by much, but just a little bit short. So here's my center back seam, and I got just about an inch or a little bit more on each side. And I toyed with different things. I toyed with just leaving it, which I don't like. I toyed with cutting out one of these big flowers and appliquing it over it, but I thought that looked kind of odd. I toyed with making a big bow out of some coordinating fabric and everything. And what I've decided to do is take a cue from some things that I've seen in shops where they try to put the label on the outside. And I was thinking actually one that was out of a muslin or something would be cute, but the only labels that I have are my ones that are on the satin ribbon. So what I am going to do is I have a little piece of gray Petersham ribbon, and I'm putting a tiny bit of stitch witchery right in the middle here. Scoot this over a bit. And I am going to fuse first my little label on top of that, just to hold it in place. Because I'm going to need to stitch around it. So now that my little label is on here, what I'm going to do is just stitch around this label to permanently secure it to my little piece of Petersham. And then once that is done, I'm going to sew it right here to make it look like, see, this was planned. Okay, we know it wasn't planned, but it looked like it was planned, you know, in a weird kind of way. That's my thought. It's late at night. It's the best I can come up with. So let me go ahead and stitch around the border of this little guy here and get this sewed on right there. Okay, so it is on there now. I think it's lovely. Yeah, and I do live in Calais. That's the name of my village, but you know, it looks classier in French for some reason. But I digress. I need to go ahead and get the elastic for this back piece now. Okay, so I just read that I'm supposed to cut a piece of elastic the size of Elastic Guide 7, which I did not cut out, and at this point I don't want to go digging through the pattern envelope. So I am going to estimate. I want my finished back to be able to be the size of the front, you know, because the side seams are usually the point where the back matches the front, okay? So I'm going to cut my elastic. If I flip this over so that the front side shows here, it will make more sense. I'm going to cut my elastic the width of the front from the side seam here to the side seam over here. And that should, by the time I have to pull out a seam allowance and stretch it a bit and everything, that should be close enough. If it feels like it's too loose, I can always, you know, cinch it in a little bit. That's okay. So I am using a half-inch wide elastic. When I got to my elastic box, I just decided that the 1 inch looked a little bit heavy duty for this, and I think ½ inch will be fine. And like I told you, I'm just going to open up, if I get my lace out of the way here, I'm just going to open up a couple stitches in the side seam. A seam ripper would do it a lot easier, and use that to feed my elastic through. Okay, so I've got a little bit open here on both of my side facings. Just going to clip my elastic with my bodkin here and feed it through this whole back part. I think I'm going to start over here and just work my way through. Okay, so I'm pulling it through, and I'm going to go ahead and pin this side with about maybe 1 inch of the elastic peeking out here, just to hold it in place. And coming over here to this side, is. I want to pull the elastic through, and I'm going to go ahead and pin it over here about the same, about 1 inch, and give the whole thing a little shake out and stretch and see how that looks. Well, it is bringing it in some. I think I might want to take it in just a little bit more. So I'm going to pull this side so I have about 4 inches sticking out. Shake this again, and I think that that's a lot better. Okay, so what I'm going to do, because I already have stuff, you know, here, with my piece still hanging out here, I'm going to go ahead and do kind of like a stitch in the ditch right over this seam here, so it'll lock in the elastic, but I'm going to be stitching it on the back side, okay, this side over here. Once I have that stitched, then I'll be able to go ahead and clip the elastic and pop it in the front facing. So I hope you can see that's the stitching line I was telling you about. This is the back side. So now that that is done, I'm just going to clip my elastic fairly short, and I should be able to just pop that end of the elastic tail into the front facing. I'm not even going to worry about stitching that closed because it's never going to come open. And that is good. The last thing that I need to do is hem this, and I shortened the pattern ahead of time so that it was going to be the correct length for me. So at this point, all I'm going to do is just make a little hem where I'm going to turn it up a 1/2 inch. Nope. I'm going to turn it up a 1/4 inch, press that, turn it up about 1 inch, press that, and then just edge stitch it across the top. And that's going to be it. I'm going to do that for both of these legs. Alright, so here it is. This is actually a very good mid-July kind of sultry day outfit. And thank you very much. If you can see, it does hang pretty low in the back, and I have these strapped, cinched up as high as I can under my arms. You need to just go away for a minute, honey. Cinched up as high as I can under my arms, you know, so I can't pull it up any higher. But it hangs low, so I've just got a little, you know, tank top thing. Thank you. Underneath it. Very comfortable. It was not hard to pull up and down. You know, that's one of my big things with these jumpsuit kind of things. So, yeah, I like it. I think it's fun. And you know what? I don't even mind the way that... Please, I don't even mind the way that the label looks. You know, I think it's kind of different. So, you know, you do you. I like the little lace. It's a fun outfit. You can't be too serious with a fun outfit. So anyway, I hope you liked it. I got stuff to do around the farm, so I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, free of the city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sew and spin, and move the horses in to the barn, then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful white houses, the view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.